Today we're going to discuss rational exponents. So first of all, let me define the word rational. Rational is a ratio, and a ratio basically is a fraction. So first we're going to have some rules about how to translate exponential with a rational exponent. In other words, a fraction exponent. What does that mean? X to the 1/2 is the same thing as the square root of x. So I like to memorize this as x to the power over root. So notice here, this is the power, this is the root. So we have a power and a root. When we do the square root, mathematicians are lazy. We don't put that 2 there, but we know it's the square root. So a couple transformations. If I have x to the 1/3, sometimes my pen doesn't work so well. 1/3, what does that mean? That means the cube root, or the cube root of x to the 1. And again, most of the time when we have things to the first power, we just don't put that power there. So the first thing that you're going to have to do is translate. If I have something, this is what's called radical form. And you'll have to translate this to rational exponent form. So again, if you think this is your rule for today, you have to memorize it somehow. So I've noticed that if this is the power and the root goes in the denominator, and students have a pretty easy time about that. So make sure that you have your rule down in your notes. A couple of these examples going from what we call rational exponent to radical notation. And then, of course, this is radical to rational. And then I'll give you a couple of examples. So hit pause, make sure you're caught up, and we'll go from there. So the first example, you're going to be asked to write this in exponential form. So when we have two things underneath the radical, we'll put parentheses here, 2n, this is your power, and the number by the radical sign is your root. If we have two things again, we'll take our thing that's inside of the radical, and we'll take this to the power and the root. But then, like yesterday, we'll have to look to see if we can simplify these. So this is an A and this is a B. Two things raised to power means 32 to the 5/6 and k to the 5/6. So let's go see if 32 to the 5/6, let's go punch that on our calculator. You punch 32, use the raise to the power, but since we have a fraction power, we'll put our parentheses and then see if that simplifies. So when you punch that out, on my calculator, I got like a 17.9595. It wasn't pretty. In other words, it didn't come out normal. Then our final answer will just be 32k raised to the 5/6. So these first couple, you're just going to be asked to tell whether or not it's in exponential form, or the next couple, we're going to look at switching to what we call radical form. So radical form means that we'll have this radical sign. This is your power and this is your root. So here we'd have x to the 5th. This is our root. This number goes right in here. And again, typically when it's a square root, we'll just see no number here. So what you have to know is if that 2 is not present, you have to know to put that 2 in there. If we have 2 things raised to the radical, then just make sure that you put all of that underneath the radical. So 1 would be our power, 1 would be our power, 4 is our root. And again, in math, typically anything to the first power, we don't put any power. Next, I'm going to give you some simplifying problems where we'll use these calculators and we'll use our power to the power rules. And if you have any problems and we're in class, hit stop and ask a question. Okay. The first 2 questions that we're going to go over is the 16p to the 4th to the 3/4. And we're going to just be asked to simplify these. So let's look at our rules that we had yesterday. And our rules that we had yesterday is if we have 2 things raised to a power, we take each one of those raised to the power. So we're going to take 16 raised to the 3/4, and we're going to take p to the 4th raised to the 3/4. So again, take out your calculators. I'm going to show you how to punch these out and simplify. Okay. So first of all, let's just take this 16 raised to the power on these calculators is this caret sign. You'll notice that when you raise it to the power, you automatically get to the exponent. So all you need to do is type in 3/4, and this will simplify to 8. A power to a power, how do we multiply 4 times 3/4? On these calculators, just multiply 4 times 3/4, and we'll get p to the 3rd. So we're going to take a couple things that we learned yesterday and apply them to our radical forms. Number 6 example, again, let's take each of these raised to the power. So we'll get 64 raised to the 3/2 and squared raised to the 3/2. So you'll be allowed to use your calculators. So 64 raised to the 3/2 is 512. Power to power, you should know that 2 times 3/2 is equal to 3 because the 2's will cancel here and we'll be left with 3rd. But again, you can use your calculator to figure that out as well. Write down 7 and 8. Try them yourself and hit pause and then hit play and see if you got the correct answer. Number 7 is just a power to a power. So we're just going to multiply those. We get v to the 12th. Number 8, we're going to take 25 to the 3/2 and x squared to the 3/2. So again, 25 raised to 3/2 is going to give us 125. Power to a power, 2 times 3/2 is equal to 3. The next 2 examples are going to be with negative powers. Remember, we have a rule about negative powers. Negative powers just means 1 over positive power, but we'll worry about that in step 2. So first off, let's take each of these to the power. So 243 raised to the negative 2/5, and next to the 5th raised to the negative 2/5. So Let's take our number first, raised to the negative 2/5. Our calculator will give us a decimal, and you must put this in a fraction. So hit math and then fraction, and that will give you the fraction equivalent of 243 raised to the negative 2/5. A power to a power, 5 times negative 2/5 is equal to a negative 2. So we have x to the negative 2, but remember what a negative power means. Your final answer will be 1/9. A negative power just means you're going to have that x to the positive power on the denominator. The last example I'm going to do is just a exponent to a power. So what do? We multiply those powers. So 6 times a negative 5/6. Again, you can use your calculator, or 6 over 6 would be 1, so we'll get a b to the negative 5th. A negative power just means that you'll have 1 over b to the positive power.